welcome back to the channel. Hi, hello. If you're new here, my name is Amanda. I am an aspiring author. I write dark romantasy, and I'm currently working on a project called Orphans of Divinity. And I wanted to make a video today to update you guys on where I'm at with my process, with my project, kind of what's going on and those sorts of things. So for the update that I wanted to share with you is that I had to make some significant changes to my story. And the first change I made was based around my female protagonist. If you've watched my prior video, my introduction to my characters and antagonist video, in that video I kind of gave you a hint that there might be some problems that I was facing with my female character's profile. And I had given her two different character traits that I absolutely loved, and in any other romantical setting would have been fine and would have worked really well with the plot lines. For the particular plot lines that I'm including in this novel, I needed a character that was just extremely proactive, someone that takes chances, that takes risks, that handles stress very well, and is not afraid of making a tough choice and even a gray choice. And the character's profile I had created was primarily based around a fear of failure, and that just wouldn't work because someone with a fear of failure just would not make the choices to take risk or take chances for things to occur. They would also probably hide away from like large choices that would have large impacts. And so I had to change it. And when I changed it, there was like this snowball effect that occurred. And then that meant that I had to change majority of everything that I had already written for this story, which was about 12,000 words. If you had seen my last 6-month challenge video, that was where I left off at the end of July, was I had made 12,000 words of progress, and that's not including my outline, of course. And so with these changes, I had to sideline all of that work, primarily because all 12,000 words were focused on my character's POV from a character profile that was based around fear of failure. And as you know, like the traits that you give your characters, they affect everything. They affect their perspective, they affect their inner voice, they affect their behaviors that are depicted within the scenes, their responses to things. And so that just meant that those scenes that I had written with that character being sidelined, I'm going to save them. I'm not going to scrap them. And I'm going to find ways to kind of take little snippets here and there from what I've already written and write it into the newer character perspective that I've created. That was a difficult choice to make, to be very honest. Coming to the understanding that I either change this character profile or I continue writing with a character profile whose traits are not going to allow her to do what I need her to do, which then slows down the plot. So I opted to make the hard choice to change it up front before I got too far into the novel, rather than writing and hoping that I could make it work. And honestly, I'm happy because I think it was the right decision. I feel like the story is stronger for it. I totally leaned into my writerly instinct, and I trusted my gut feeling that there's something here that's just not quite working. And once I identified it was the trait, I trusted myself to just adjust it. And I'm happy for that. I feel very good about it. So that was a journey. The second change that I made to my story is around one of the tropes. As you know, I'm including two dominant tropes in my story. Hate to love is the first one and the primary, and then the second one is faded bonds or soul bonds between my characters for romance. And I just absolutely love both of these tropes. They're some of my favorite tropes, so I wanted to include them in this novel. But this viewer and writer also suggested maybe not having the faded bond be an element within the story because it's just really front-facing and it's in your face, you know what to expect. And at first I disagreed because I like to write characters with agency, that they still have the final say based on their character, their plot, and their arc, right? And so because of that, I was like really resistant to the idea at first, but then I was like, okay, hold on. Let's think about this for a second. And I thought, okay, let's play devil's advocate. What would the story look like if I actually took that out completely, or I took out Fated Bonds to some degree and just changed how it was presented in the story? Originally, I set it up in the story that in the inciting incident, the male main character would sacrifice something from his province in order to gain the female main character and save her from execution and gain her power, but also equally so gain her because she is his fated mate. And I thought, okay, that's great. I love it because it's a public announcement, right? Like it puts everyone on the spot. And then I realized my male main character's character, he's very callous, he's very careful. He would not openly admit that he has found his fated mate, especially in the midst of his enemies, because all of them could then use her against him if they decided they didn't want to uphold the magical agreement of the soul bonds. I decided, okay, let's take out the public announcement. What I want to do instead is I'm going to still keep the fated mate bond, but I'm going to slowly introduce it into the story, and I'm going to build on it throughout the story all the way to the end. In the inciting incident, I'm going to have them recognize that there's something there between each other. The male main character is going to know more about the soul bonds than the female character would. So he's going to have a little bit more understanding of potentially that's what he's sensing, but he's also critical, right? And he's careful. So he's going to also consider the flip side of it, which is that it could potentially be a trick. It could be a spell from the witches. He doesn't know, but he also doesn't want to relinquish the female main character just in case. So it's more beneficial for him to still help her in that sense. And I am going to weave it into the story so that his betrayal is going to be revealed at the midpoint, which is part of the change that the characters are going to go through where nothing is the same. Him having hidden the fact that they are potentially mates or are mates. Throughout Act 2A, I am going to be building on the feeling of the male main character slowly realizing, yes, she's my enemy, but she's equally my soul bonded mate, and him struggling with handling all of that while the female main character doesn't really have any idea that that is occurring yet. And so my midpoint change, one of the elements of my midpoint is that this information becomes apparent to the female main character, and this is going to be used as a way to incite the male main character's betrayal of having kept that information to himself this entire time. And I think it will work out great because I actually have it planned that my male main character progresses through his arc a little bit quicker than my female main character, because you're not going to have two characters that align equally and they change at the same time. Usually one starts to change and then that then kicks off the emotional change for some element of this other character, which then kicks off the emotional change of the other character again, right? And it's like this feedback loop of constant cause and effect. And so he's going to be the one that starts off with the actual emotional change. And the female main character is a little bit slower to take. And that's because the story is primarily told through her lens and less so his. She's going to have more chapters than he will. When I first made the decision to make the changes to the story, I sat with it for a few days. I resisted it for a few days, even though I knew in my heart that it was the right decision. And I was so not wanting to adjust because I felt like I'd made so much progress. I didn't want to lose my progress. I didn't want to lose my motivation by having to adjust things and start fresh. And I just was afraid overall of kind of what would happen after taking a pause, you know? And I let it hold me back for like a week almost. And then I made the changes, which took another week to really think through the story and think through how that affects the plot and the characters and the direction I wanted to go. Make sure everything's still aligned with the theme that I had planned. And I was more, I think, upset over not having to make the changes, but just upset over having to adjust the challenge that I'm doing a little bit to better fit the changes that I've had to make in my writing process. And I think that's due to like expectations. I have some high expectations for myself. I always have. And, you know, part of learning to sit down and write and do it as a daily practice or an every other day practice, part of that is learning to manage those expectations. And I just had to remind myself, yes, the end goal is publication. I would absolutely love that. That is my dream. But I have to be happy with the daily grind. I have to be happy and satisfied with the daily effort. That is the true process, is what I do every day that helps me chip away towards my dream or my goal, which is a published book. And the published book is just the end result. That's the afterthought, right? And so I shouldn't let it get to me. I have to manage my expectations and make them realistic and understand that this is just part of the process. It's more difficult said than done, but you just gotta accept it sometimes and just go with it. And we're doing that. It essentially changed the structure, it changed the character arc, and it changed some of the pacing of my story due to needing to release the information over a slower time frame rather than like quickly. This also now determined the spicy level of my book, which was planned on being a 4. It's probably going to end up being a 3 now, or a 2 even, leaning a little bit more towards a slower burn, due to needing to release the information about the mate bond slower. Now that I have all of those changes done though, I am feeling really good about where I'm at with my story. Yes, I'm at the beginning. Currently, I have worked through about 1,000 words, and I've written chapter 1 and 2 or scene 1 and 2, and I've left lots of holes. So I want to have some time to go back in and fill in those gaps with some information, things that I feel like are missing, like elements I need to hit. And I want to keep pushing this week. It's the last week of August, to write as much as I can. So I'm trying out writing a little bit every single day. I'm realistically understanding that I'm going to have to adjust my writing goals that I had for the 6-month challenge due to the changes that I had to make to better the story. Thus is the writing process, right? Like, I'm not upset about it. I'm rolling with it. I'm flexing with it. And it feels good. I'm in a good space. I'm excited to keep going. And I feel like things are going to work out. So if you guys have had any issues with your own story this week that you've ran into, things that you've had to change that have significantly altered your story, go ahead and leave a comment in the description below for me. I'd love to know, so that I also know that I'm not the only one that's had to take a moment, take a pause, and just like rethink things for a second, right? And recalibrate, or put some of it aside and start fresh. And I think it's just the writing process at the end of the day. And writing is a lifelong thing. We're always going to be learning new things every day with writing, both about the writing and about ourselves. So that's okay. I might as well be comfortable with it now, right? Than later. That was all I wanted to do today, was give you guys the update on my story, kind of where I'm at, talk about it with you, get your thoughts on things. And I am trying my best to make some fast pushes this week. So we'll see how it goes. If you are currently also writing a novel, I hope you have a very good week. Happy writing, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.